I'm Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. It's the first Sunday in March. We're going to talk a little bit about science. I love science. Let me give you a definition of science. Science is a branch of knowledge or study dealing with a body of known facts governing the systemic operation of general laws. That in terms of mathematics and in terms of the physical material world, gained through observation and experimentation. But it's the speculation that I struggle with. Let me give you a case in point. There was an Associated Press article out of Washington that said for the first time astronomers have glimpsed the dawn of the universe 13.6 billion years ago, when the earliest stars were just beginning to glow right after the Big Bang. Oh, and they have pictures. Well, artists' renderings. And they have actual scientific results to prove this must have happened. What they don't have is scientific proof something like this could have happened, let alone when, how, if it did. Was there a Big Bang that brought the universe into being? This is the evolutionists' effort to describe a monumental explosion of material from what they call, euphemistically, a singularity. All right, well, inquiring minds want to know, where did this singularity come from? Well, a website entitled allaboutscience.org answers the question saying, quote, well, to be honest, we don't know for sure. I love science. The idea that a small amount of material suddenly exploded into a great deal of material is not what the Big Bang Theory suggests. What science seems to assume is that somehow, somewhere deep in what we call space, there were black holes, areas of intense gravitational pressure. The pressure is thought to be so intense that finite matter is actually squished into infinite density. A mathematical concept, they freely admit, boggles the mind. We are off into theory, kind of a little weird theory that they really can't even imagine, but it must be like this. Now keep in mind, space or science has actually observed what they think are black holes in space. In these theoretical zones, not the actual black holes, since there doesn't seem to be any proof as to what these are or what they represent, but in these theoretical zones, there are what science calls singularities. Infinitely small, infinitely hot, infinitely dense something. Keep in mind, science deals only in facts. Haven't come up with that yet. Something. According to scientific theory, the early universe was black and cold, filled with just hydrogen and helium. Once stars formed, we don't know how, we don't know when, we don't know why, they emitted ultraviolet light into the dark areas between them. That ultraviolet light changes the energy signature of the hydrogen atoms. So, astronomers looked at a specific wavelength. Their assumption, and we're talking about light here, the assumption is if there were stars and ultraviolet light, they would see one kind of signature. If there were no stars, they would see a different signature. What they saw was a clear but faint signal showing there were stars, probably many of them. Now, in the sense of fair play, the observers freely admit that finding this trace signal wasn't easy, because the Milky Way galaxy alone booms with radio wave noise 10,000 times louder. According to an advanced program technology director for the National Science Foundation by the name of Peter Kurczynski. Finding the impact of the first stars in that cacophony would be like trying to hear the flap of a hummingbird's wing inside a hurricane, according to Kurczynski. Because the high end of the frequency they were looking in is the same as FM radio, the astronomers had to go to the Australian desert to escape interference. That's where they put up their antenna. They then labored to confirm what they found, in part by testing it against dummy signals in the lab, and it all showed that what they spotted was the existence of the first stars. Are you starting to get the point? Where did this come from? Well, we don't know, they say. Why did it appear? Well, we don't know, they say. And it is upon this scientific reality that the atheistic theory of the origin of the universe rests. But since the alternative demands an eternally existing, all-powerful God who merely speaks things into existence, science, the world of human thought, is sticking with their own untested and untestable theories. You see, nobody has ever gotten something from nothing. And this universe did not spring from nothing. The Bible says God spoke all we see into existence. As radical as that sounds, the scientist says, well, that's not science. And so they reject it. But wait a minute, nobody saw the Big Bang either. And that's established scientific fact. You see how it works? Now, in reality, no one has ever seen God and lived to tell about it. The exception may be the Apostle John, who was translated to heaven, but we all know that what he saw was one who sat on a throne. We don't know who that one was. It could very well be Jesus. But then Jesus is God, isn't he? The Bible is the only place we even read about this one true God of heaven. Do you now see why it's important to have so many different versions of the Bible? And nobody seems to know how many there are. For the English translations and paraphrases, that number is somewhere near 900, according to a website called AmericanBible.org. The book that lists English translations consists of 806 pages. That's just listing the books themselves. And this proliferation of so-called Bibles is deliberate. Now, it used to be more difficult for science to unseat the Bible in terms of this subject, in large part because Christians actually knew, studied, taught, preached the Bible, and because many of the early scientists were Christians. Today, Christianity is whatever you think it is. It may not be the same as what I think it is, and none of that's the same as what Benny Hinn thinks it is. And a Christian is someone who says, well, that's what I am. And churches revolve around scholarly approaches to the Bible, even if not everyone accepts the conclusions. Our approach to Christianity and the Bible changed somewhere in the 1960s. About the same time our national education system abandoned all things traditional and instituted something called new measures. Bible reading in school Prayer in school, out. New measures, in. And one consequence is that children are no longer taught how to read, or how to write, or how to think. And the concepts of authority, absolute authority, and objective discipline are nowhere to be found. The philosopher says, as the twig is bent, so grows the tree. Well, what about parental values? Have you seen a real parent lately? Do you see them in the supermarket, at the pool, at the dinner table? Oh, wait, we don't have a family dinner table anymore, do we? The dinner table was the place parents got to watch, listen to, question their children about all sorts of things. It wasn't grilling the children, it was just conversation. And parents learned about their children. The dinner table was a place where Dad prayed before the meal to the one true God of heaven, even if he didn't believe in him. A place where Mom listened to her children's heart. A place of accountability, instruction, training. And we took all that out. It's all gone. And all the succeeding generations with it. Children are now the adults in the room. Parents follow them around to make sure they don't destroy stuff or get hurt, catering to their desires, their whims, and even their anger. I watch it in the public places. Moms and dads chasing after children to kind of protect them as they do what they do. Nobody's grabbing them up by the scruff of their neck and say, I told you to stay here. Stop. Don't touch it. Don't hear that much. Children used to stay with their parents. Didn't think about wandering off. Children used to keep quiet in the presence of adults. Children used to ask if they could do something, usually with a please. Why? Well, because parents had self-respect. Because parents knew that as parents they were expected to train their children, not just make sure they didn't die. Because parents knew they were in charge. And because parents wanted children who knew how to live properly. They were looking out for their kids. They were looking out for their grandchildren. They were looking out for society. But today we get the question, well, who says what's proper? And the answer is God. In the Bible, it is written, children, obey your parents in the Lord. In the Bible, it is written, parents, train up your children in the way they should go. You see how it works? We've abandoned the Bible, even as we're in church every Sunday. And now we're reaping the whirlwind. I don't think that it is extreme to say that this is not likely to change. Because human behavior tends to run down unless there's a meaningful reason not to. And it does that because the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked beyond anything we can imagine. Jeremiah 17. Left to itself, the human heart will destroy. And it destroys itself first. Science will continue to postulate a Big Bang, whether they ever have real evidence of such an event, largely because they refuse to accept anything that's not physical. They only have another alternative, which is what the Bible says, and they're not going there. When they speak of this event, it is always in theory, not fact, since no one saw it. and the event cannot be measured, and that's what science is about. However, there are areas in the universe of intense gravitational pressure thought to be so intense that finite matter is actually being squished into infinite density, a singularity. This is a mathematical concept which truly boggles the mind, even the minds of these scientists. They call these singularities black holes. And they tell us our universe began as a result of one of them. An infinitesimally small, infinitely hot, infinitely dense something. But they don't know where it came from. They don't know why it came, and they don't seem to know anybody who does. And if that's not enough, scientists claim they may have detected mysterious dark matter at work. Judd Bowman of Arizona State University, lead author of a study in Wednesday's journal Nature, said the signal came from the very first objects in the universe as it was emerging out of darkness 180 million years after the Big Bang. That's pretty precise. Astronomer Richard Ellis, who was not involved in the project, said of this discovery, seeing the universe just lighting up, even though it was only a faint signal, is even more important than the Big Bang because, quote, we are made of star stuff. And so we are glimpsing our origin. These scientists are saying it may have been and was only a faint signal, yet they have crowned it like the first sentence in an early chapter of the history of the cosmos. They're talking about a sound wave so faint, they admit, finding the impact of the first stars in that cacophony would be like trying to hear the flap of a hummingbird's wing inside a hurricane. But they want us to believe that they've got it. The Bible believers declare a man named Jesus who lived in Israel 2,000 years ago, did miracles witnessed by hundreds of people over a 3-year span of time in full view of God and everybody, and they say that's a myth. Yet someone who has never actually seen this something declares that it exists because science says it must have happened that way. And they mock Christians for their faith. Faith based on fact, on testimony, on recorded first-hand witnesses, as opposed to nothing the astronomers could actually see. Their words, not mine. Quote, in fact, it's all indirect, based on changes in the wavelengths produced by radio signals, end of quote. And as one scientist declared, this, therefore, is about as important as it can get in cosmology. This is science. The Bible? Mythology. I love science. Don't you?